My stepfather forced me out until I uncovered his hidden criminal past. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. The day my stepfather threw me out wasn't some heated argument that spiraled out of control. It was planned, calculated. I'd just gotten home from my shift at the cafe, shoes still damp from the rain, when I saw 2 suitcases by the door of mine. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, wearing that smug expression that always meant bad news. "You're not living here anymore," he said flatly. I blinked, thinking I'd misheard. "What are you talking about?" "You're an adult now," he replied, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "It's time you learned to take care of yourself. I've already changed the locks. You can grab your stuff and go." I looked past him toward the living room. My mom was there, sitting stiffly on the couch, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mom," my voice cracked. "Are you okay with this?" She swallowed hard but didn't answer. He smirked. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You've been freeloading long enough." Freeloading. I paid for my own groceries. I covered part of the utility bill when I could. I never once asked him for money. But none of that mattered. This was about control, not fairness. When I refused to move, he grabbed one of the suitcases and shoved it into my hands. "Out. Now." The door slammed behind me so hard it rattled the frame. I stood there in the rain, suitcase in one hand, my backpack digging into my shoulder, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I crashed on my friend's couch that night, telling myself it was just temporary, that Mom would call, that this was some twisted misunderstanding. She never did. It took months before I stopped checking my phone every hour. By then, I'd started to let the anger replace the hurt. And that's when I heard something about my stepfather that didn't make sense. A rumor that the man who'd called me a freeloader was living off money that didn't belong to him. It started in the most unexpected way, at the cafe where I worked. A pair of regulars, older guys who always sat at the back table, were whispering over their coffees. I wasn't paying attention until I heard his name. "And you know who's mixed up in it, right?" "That guy, Tom Sanders," one of them said. My stepfather's name hit my ears like an electric shock. The other man snorted. "Mixed up? He's running half of it." I froze mid-step, the tray in my hand suddenly heavier. I tried to act casual as I wiped a nearby table, leaning just close enough to catch more. "Been laundering money for years," the first man continued. "Real estate deals that don't exist, shell companies all over the state. I'm telling you, one of these days it's gonna blow up in his face." Laundering money. Shell companies. My stepfather? The same man who had tossed me into the street for not pulling my weight. By the time I got back to the counter, my mind was racing. I wanted to dismiss it as gossip. Small-town rumor mills could be vicious. But something about it stuck under my skin. I started replaying every moment I could remember from living under his roof. The strange phone calls he'd take in the garage. The envelopes of cash he'd sometimes carry in his jacket. The men who'd show up late at night and leave within minutes, avoiding eye contact. That night, I called Mom. She picked up, but her voice was cold, wary. I asked her straight out if Tom was involved in anything shady. She snapped, "Stop trying to stir up trouble. You're not part of this family anymore," and hung up. Her reaction told me more than her words. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking, if this was true, I couldn't just let it go. This wasn't just about me being kicked out anymore. It was about the man my mother was living with. The man who had power, money, and apparently dangerous connections. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to find proof. But I had no idea that my first step would put me face to face with someone who knew exactly how deep Tom's secrets went. The person who gave me my first real lead wasn't a friend or even someone I trusted. It was a former employee of my stepfather's. I met him by accident. I was at the bus stop after work when I noticed a man sitting a few feet away, nursing a paper cup of coffee. He looked rough, like life had chewed him up and spit him out. Deep lines in his face, hands stained with motor oil. When the bus was late, we started talking. His name was Rick. When I mentioned my last name, his eyebrows shot up. "You related to Tom Sanders?" I hesitated. "He's my stepfather." Rick let out a humorless laugh. "Then I'm surprised you're talking to me. I used to work for him." That caught my attention. "What happened?" "He fired me when I asked too many questions," Rick said, voice low. "Your stepdad's not who you think he is. He's into things you don't want to be anywhere near. You ever wonder where all his money comes from?" It's not real estate. That's just the cover. My pulse quickened. What is it then? Rick glanced around, like he was checking for someone watching. Money laundering. And not the small-time stuff. Big operations. Fake companies, forged invoices, offshore accounts. And he's got friends in places that keep him safe. It was the same story I'd overheard at the cafe, but now it had weight. This wasn't gossip. It was coming from someone who'd been close enough to see the dirt. I asked Rick if he had proof. He shook his head. Not on me. But there's a storage unit. One he thinks nobody knows about. I used to make deliveries there. If you're looking for answers, that's where you'll find them. My mind was already turning. A storage unit could mean anything. Tax records, fake contracts, maybe even cash. I was ready to ask for the address when Rick's face went pale. A black SUV had pulled up across the street, windows tinted, engine idling. They're watching me, he muttered, standing abruptly. Forget we talked. For your own good. He walked away fast, disappearing down the block. And I was left staring at that SUV, wondering if it was watching me too. The SUV didn't move. It just sat there, engine humming, like a predator waiting for its prey to make the wrong move. I told myself it was nothing, just some random car, but every time I glanced over, I could see the faint silhouette of someone in the driver's seat. Watching. The bus finally arrived, and I climbed aboard, choosing a seat in the back where I could keep an eye on the street. As the bus pulled away, I checked again. The SUV stayed put for a moment, then slid into traffic, keeping a few cars behind us. My stomach tightened. I got off 3 stops early, ducking into a crowded convenience store. I lingered near the magazine rack, pretending to browse. Through the window, I saw the SUV cruise slowly past, then circle the block. It wasn't a coincidence. By the time I got back to my friend's apartment, I was shaking. I locked the door, closed the blinds, and sat on the couch in the dark, replaying every detail of my conversation with Rick. If Tom really had people watching me already, then Rick's warning was more than just paranoia. I debated calling the police, but what would I say? Hi, my stepfather's a criminal, and now I think he's having me followed. They'd laugh me off the phone, or worse, tip him off. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and started digging. I didn't know the address of the storage unit Rick had mentioned, but I did know some of Tom's old business names. A few online searches led me to property records. Most were clean, but one tiny listing caught my eye. A rental under the name of a dissolved company. The location? An industrial park 2 towns over. And the tenant's listed contact number matched Tom's old office line. It could be nothing, or it could be the key to everything. I decided I'd go there, but not alone. That night, I called the one person I knew hated Tom almost as much as I did. And when she picked up, her first words were, "I was wondering when you'd finally call me about him." Her name was Jenna. She used to date my stepbrother years ago, and for a while, she was practically part of the family, until Tom decided she wasn't good enough and made sure she was cut out of our lives. I still remembered the last time I saw her, standing on our front porch as Tom slammed the door in her face. Whatever happened after that, she clearly hadn't forgiven him. When I explained what I'd learned about the storage unit, Jenna didn't hesitate. If it's his, there's something in there worth hiding. And I'm guessing it's not Christmas decorations. I asked if she was willing to help me check it out. She didn't even pause. Tell me when. I'll drive. We agreed to meet the next morning. Jenna pulled up in a beat-up old pickup that looked like it had seen a few questionable adventures. She handed me a baseball cap and a pair of sunglasses. "You're not famous," she said, smirking. "But let's not make this easy for anyone watching." The industrial park was quiet, rows of metal doors stretching into the distance. We found the unit number from my notes. No cameras that I could see, but a heavy padlock secured the door. Jenna crouched down, inspecting it. Brand new. Someone's been here recently. We debated breaking in right then, but without tools, it was pointless. Instead, we looked around for clues, anything that might tell us how often Tom came here. That's when Jenna spotted a crushed coffee cup near the corner, with a drive-through logo from a diner in town. The date on the receipt inside? 2 days ago, which means he's still using this place, she said. We were about to leave when a sound made us freeze, the low rumble of an engine. At the far end of the row, a familiar black SUV turned the corner. It was heading straight for us. The SUV rolled closer, slow and deliberate, like the driver was sizing us up. Jenna grabbed my arm and yanked me behind a stack of old pallets leaning against the wall of the next unit. We crouched low, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Through the slats, I caught a glimpse of the driver, a man in his late 40s, wearing sunglasses even in the shade. His jaw was tight, his gaze sweeping the row. The SUV slowed as it passed Tom's unit. The driver glanced at the lock, then at the ground where Jenna had been standing moments ago. His eyes narrowed. For a second, I thought he'd get out. But instead, he drove on, only to stop at the end of the row. Jenna leaned in, whispering, "He's waiting." We stayed hidden for what felt like forever. Finally, Jenna made the call. She grabbed my wrist, and we slipped around the back side of the units, keeping low and using the shadows as cover. We didn't head for her truck right away. Instead, we circled around to a side road that would bring us to the lot from the opposite direction. When we finally got to her truck, the SUV was gone. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence, but the look in that man's eyes told me otherwise. Whoever he wasn't there to rent a storage unit. On the drive back, Jenna was silent for a while. Then she said, "If you're serious about taking Tom down, you're going to need more than rumors and a lock you can't open. You need a plan." She wasn't wrong. Breaking into the unit without getting caught was going to take more than showing up with a bolt cutter. I needed to know exactly when Tom came here and when it was safe to go in, which meant watching the place. The problem? I had no idea that the next time I showed up to watch, I wouldn't be the only one doing the observing. 2 days later, I borrowed a rusted old sedan from a coworker who owed me a favor. I parked it across the street from the industrial park, angled so I could see Tom's unit without being too obvious. The plan was simple: sit, watch, and log every movement. I brought a thermos of coffee, a notebook, and the hope that this would be boring. For hours, nothing happened. The lot was quiet except for the occasional pickup or moving van stopping at other units. Around midday, I spotted a figure in the distance, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with purpose. It was Tom. He didn't come alone. A second man got out of the passenger seat, carrying what looked like a heavy duffel bag. They opened the unit quickly, slipped inside, and shut the door behind them. No light leaked through the seams. They stayed in there for about 20 minutes. When they emerged, the duffel was gone. Tom scanned the lot like he was checking for tails, then got back into his SUV and drove off. I scribbled down the time, the car's plate, the make of the duffel bag, black canvas with a torn strap. My mind spun with possibilities. Cash, weapons, documents. But my notes froze mid-sentence when I caught sight of a shadow in my rearview mirror. A dark sedan had pulled up 2 spaces behind me. The driver wasn't looking at the units. He was looking at me. I tried to play it cool, flipping through my notebook like I was reading. But when I risked another glance, he was still staring, and now, he had his phone out, aimed in my direction. Was he taking a picture? I didn't wait to find out. I started the engine, pulled away slowly, and took the first turn I could. My heart didn't stop hammering until I was 2 miles away. That night, I found a piece of paper slid under my friend's apartment door. In block letters, it read, "Stop looking, or you won't like what you find." I stared at the note, my hands trembling. The paper was cheap, the ink slightly smudged, but the message was crystal clear. No signature, no return address, just a threat. Jenna read it twice, her jaw tightening. "They know where you're staying. That means they're already too close." The thought made my stomach twist. My friend had taken a risk letting me crash here. Now she could be in danger, too. "Do you want to stop?" Jenna asked. It wasn't mocking, just blunt. I shook my head. If I stop now, they win. Tom wins. She gave a half smile. Then we hit back. But smart. The next morning, I called Rick. His voice was tense when I explained the note. "That means you're rattling someone. And if Tom's involved, it's because you're close to something he doesn't want seen." Rick suggested we use the threat to our advantage. "Let them think you're scared off. Stay away from the storage unit for a week. I'll see what I can dig up in the meantime." It was a decent plan, but it didn't stop the paranoia. Every trip to the store felt like someone was following me. Every car idling too long near the curb made my pulse race. Then, one night, as I was taking the trash out, I noticed something in the alley, half hidden under a damp tarp. It was a black canvas duffel bag, the same kind I'd seen Tom's associate carrying out of the storage unit. I crouched down and pulled the zipper halfway open. Inside, I caught a glimpse of thick folders, rubber-banded stacks of papers, and a flash of something metallic. Before I could look closer, headlights swept over the alley. An engine roared to life behind me. The headlights were blinding. I froze, one hand still gripping the duffel bag. The vehicle was close, too close, and the engine's growl felt like it was right in my chest. Then, a car door slammed. "Put it down," a voice barked. "Mail." Sharp. No hesitation. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs were slow to listen. I yanked the bag off the ground, clutching it to my chest, and bolted down the alley. My sneakers pounded against the cracked pavement as the sound of heavy footsteps followed. "Stop!" The voice shouted again, closer this time. I didn't stop. I cut left between two dumpsters, the stench nearly making me gag, and pushed through a narrow gap into a side street. The duffel was heavier than I'd expected, and whatever was inside shifted with a metallic clank. That noise kept echoing in my head. Metal, not paper. I spotted Jenna's truck parked half a block away. She was leaning against it, smoking. The moment she saw me, her eyes widened. "Drive," I shouted, throwing myself into the passenger seat. She didn't ask questions, just stomped on the gas. In the rearview mirror, I saw a tall man burst from the alley, his face twisted in frustration. He didn't follow, but he pulled out a phone. When we were 3 streets over, Jenna finally spoke. "What the hell is in that thing?" I unzipped the bag just enough to peek. On top was a handgun, black, with the serial number filed off. Beneath it, manila folders stuffed with documents. Some looked like financial statements. Others were official forms with seals I didn't recognize. And at the very bottom, wrapped in a rag, was a small, leather-bound notebook. The first page had a list of names. Some I didn't recognize, but one of them was mine. Seeing my name there felt like ice water down my spine. It wasn't just scrawled, it was underlined twice, with a date written beside it. 3 weeks from now. What does that mean? Jenna asked, leaning over the bag. I don't know, I said, though my gut told me it wasn't anything good. We pulled into the back lot of an all-night diner. The neon sign buzzed overhead while we sifted through the contents. The documents were a mix of things, photocopied IDs, bank account summaries, and what looked like shipping manifests with coded descriptions. One page had my stepfather's name linked to a company I'd never heard of, one that supposedly didn't exist anymore. Jenna flipped through the notebook and frowned. These names, they're all tied to something. Debt, blackmail, jobs. The more I read, the more it became clear this was a record. A ledger of people Tom had either worked with or had leverage over. And if my name was in there, it meant I was part of whatever plan he had in motion. Rick needs to see this, Jenna said. But the moment she spoke, a thought hit me like a punch. If we had this bag, then whoever chased me down the alley knew exactly who had it now. As if on cue, a car rolled slowly past the diner window. The driver's face was hidden by the reflection, but I recognized the shape of the vehicle. It was the same dark sedan from my stakeout. Jenna closed the bag and shoved it under the booth. We can't stay here. I reached for my coffee, trying to play it casual, but my hand wouldn't stop shaking. Outside, the sedan didn't keep driving. It parked. The sedan idled in the lot, its engine a low growl I could feel in my bones. I couldn't see the driver's face through the tinted glass, but I knew, whoever it was, they weren't here for the pie special. Jenna's eyes flicked toward the window. We walk out now, they'll follow us. We need a back exit. I scanned the diner. A restrooms sign pointed toward a narrow hallway. Past that, I spotted a faint red glow, an exit sign above a side door. Grab the bag, I whispered. We slid out of the booth, keeping our heads down. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure the waitress could hear it. As we slipped into the hallway, the jingling of the diner's front door made me freeze. Footsteps followed. Slow. Heavy. Jenna didn't look back. She just shoved the door open, and we spilled into a narrow alley behind the diner. The cold air hit me like a slap. Trucks around the block, she said, jogging. We made it halfway to the corner before a voice called out behind us. You've got something that isn't yours. I turned, and the man from the alley stood there, hands in his coat pockets. He wasn't running. He didn't have to. His presence alone made the space feel smaller. Tell your stepfather we can make a deal, he said, his tone almost casual. Return the bag, and nobody gets hurt. The way he said nobody made it sound like a promise he enjoyed breaking. Jenna stepped forward. Yeah? Well, maybe we don't make deals with people who leave death threats under doors. The man smiled faintly. Then you won't like what happens next. Headlights flared at the end of the alley. Another car, blocking our exit. We were trapped. The second car's headlights pinned us like insects under glass. My pulse thundered in my ears. Jenna's grip tightened on the duffel bag as the man from the diner started walking toward us, his shadow stretching long under the alley lights. I glanced around. Dumpsters, chain-link fences, and a stack of wooden pallets. No way out unless we got creative. Run on 3, I whispered. Jenna gave the slightest nod. 1. The man's hand slid inside his coat. 2. The car at the alley mouth revved its engine. 3. We bolted, not toward the street, but toward the pallets. I scrambled up first, my shoes slipping on the slick wood, and grabbed the top of the fence. Jenna tossed the bag over, then clambered up behind me. A shout rang out. Stop them! We dropped into the adjacent lot and landed hard. Pain shot through my ankle, but adrenaline shoved it aside. Jenna yanked the bag into her arms, and we darted toward the far side, where a narrow gap between 2 buildings opened onto a different street. Behind us, footsteps pounded, closer now. Jenna spotted her truck parked half a block away. Move! We sprinted, and just as we reached it, a black-gloved hand brushed my jacket. I shoved back hard, slamming the man into a brick wall. Jenna fired the engine, and I dove into the passenger seat as tires squealed. We tore down the street, leaving the alley, and the men in the rear view. But as we turned the corner, Jenna's face went pale. Look! Parked 2 blocks ahead, facing us, was another dark sedan. And behind the wheel was my stepfather. The moment our eyes met through the windshield, my stomach dropped. He didn't look surprised. He looked ready, like he'd been expecting us. Jenna's hands tightened on the wheel. We can turn. Before she could finish, his sedan lurched forward, pulling into our lane. He didn't gun it. He was blocking us, forcing a slow, tense standoff. I cracked the window just enough to hear his voice when he leaned out. Get out of the truck. Calm. Controlled. The kind of tone he used when he was most dangerous. Jenna didn't move. I could see her calculating, the way her jaw clenched. You're making this worse for yourself, he continued. That bag isn't yours. Give it back, and maybe we can talk like family. The word family twisted in my gut. Family didn't throw you out onto the street. Family didn't keep ledgers of names with threats attached. I leaned out my side. Family doesn't hire goons to chase us through alleys, either. His expression didn't change, but I saw the faintest flicker in his eyes, a crack in the mask. You don't know what you're messing with, he said. There are people far worse than me involved. People who will kill to keep this quiet. Then maybe you shouldn't have gotten involved with them. I shot back. He exhaled slowly, then nodded to someone in the passenger seat of his car. A door opened. One of the men from the alley stepped out. Only this time, he wasn't empty-handed. In the dim streetlight, I caught the glint of metal. The man stepped forward, the pistol hanging low at his side, but impossible to ignore. My throat went dry. Give me the bag, he said flatly, his eyes fixed on Jenna. Now. Jenna's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. If we hand it over, we're as good as dead, she muttered under her breath. My stepfather leaned on the roof of his car, watching like this was a game he'd already won. This is your last chance, he said. Don't make me clean up a mess I don't want to. That was the moment it hit me. He wasn't bluffing. Whatever was in that bag was worth more to him than blood ties or human lives. I glanced at Jenna. Floor it. She didn't hesitate. The tires screeched as the truck lunged forward. The armed man jumped back, cursing, and my stepfather's sedan swerved to block us. Jenna cranked the wheel hard, clipping the sedan's front bumper, and we burst past in a shower of sparks. Gunshots cracked behind us. One punched through the back window, spraying glass over the seat. Jenna kept her foot on the gas, weaving down side streets until the sound of pursuit faded. We finally stopped under the cover of an abandoned warehouse lot. My hands were still shaking when I reached for the bag. Inside, I pulled out the ledger and flipped to my name. There was another word beside it now, one I hadn't noticed before. Collection. Jenna leaned over my shoulder, reading it aloud. What the hell does that mean? I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever my stepfather had planned, the clock was running out. We sat in the dark cab of Jenna's truck, the wind cutting through the shattered back window. My eyes stayed locked on that single word beside my name in the ledger. Collection. It wasn't about money. It was a death order. Jenna flipped through page after page. Names, dates, coded notes. Some names were crossed out in red. Others still waiting. It was a hit list, hidden inside fake accounting. Halfway through, We found a section marked with a paperclip, storage units, old warehouses, even a remote fishing cabin miles from town. We drove to the cabin first. The place looked abandoned, the door hanging crooked on its hinges. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of oil and mold. In the corner, under a tarp, was a locked metal crate. Jenna forced it open with a crowbar. Stacks of cash spilled out, along with folders stuffed with photographs, faces of people whose names were in the ledger. And in the middle sat a thumb drive with my stepfather's initials scratched into it. Back at Jenna's apartment, we plugged it into her laptop. The files were a goldmine: bank records, wire transfers, detailed logs of meetings with known criminals. Enough to put him away for decades. Enough to dismantle the whole operation. The next week was a blur. Meetings with a trusted journalist, handing the evidence over to the authorities, watching as my stepfather's empire unraveled in the headlines. His arrest was broadcast live. I sat in silence as he was let out in cuffs, no smirk left on his face. It didn't bring back the years he stole from me. It didn't erase the night he threw me out or the fear that followed. But it gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: control. Jenna and I burned the ledger's last page together, watching the ash scatter into the night. My name, finally erased from his list. Justice hadn't been easy. It hadn't been clean. But it was mine. And this time, I wasn't running.